So, today I would like to talk about kind of observations I, as an ENFP, have made about TE users and FE users, and like how I see them use like compassion and logic in a different way at times. So, I guess you could say this is kind of a TE PSA by mirroring what I also think of FE. Gosh, I get so nervous when I'm in front of a camera, sorry. But yeah, so a lot of my significant relationships have been with TJs, whether it's close friends or crushes and such. And I guess I just feel like there's not a lot of TE love on the internet. Frequently, like, TJs are seen as over managerial or like maybe too authoritative and cold, when I think that it just takes the right push for, and like for them to like express their emotions correctly. And also, you have to kind of know what you're looking for. So, like, signs that a TJ actually seems to want to be around you is they will bother like sharing personal facts to you. And the way I have picked up on these as an ENFP is their bids. They're like little prompters to see if you want to hear more about them. And usually people kind of gloss over these because they're not said expressively. Like, they're not like, oh my God, like, I love my family. Like, they might be like, oh yeah, like, my parents are divorced, so. And I know for me as an FI user, if I share a fact like that, it's not like I expect the other person to like say something about it, but I want them to be like, oh, like maybe like be like, what happened? Which often might seem intrusive, but in reality, it seems like you want to know more about my life. You want to explore like the facts. So me and TJs are actually more similar than they would maybe initially realize, because what I've seen is thinkers seem to think that feelers are all feeling, and FJs and FPs are so similar. And some, admittedly, I can think that a TP and a TJ who are exhibiting the same behavior have the exact same process when it's actually the opposite. Same with like, if an FI user is clingy and an FJ is clingy, they look totally different. Like, their inner process is what looks different. So, like, TJs can actually have extremely angsty and fear-driven emotion, is what I've kind of noticed. Like, they might think a lot about how they come off. Like, I know what I think is like FE thinks naturally about that. Like, it considers it. But I think a TJ who has poor FE might literally be like, is this too mean? Is this too hot? Is this too pushy or clingy? They actually don't know how their expression is going to land. So if they volunteer an FI fact, they might be thinking something like, oh my God, I can't believe I just told them my parents are divorced. Does that look like a cry for help? Does that look like I'm trying to ask for pity? Oh my God. But when really, like, it comes off like they're just saying a fact. But inside, the inner world there might be a totally different story. For me, I think that TE users can be pretty considerate because they always like acknowledge those facts. Like, okay, for me personally, as someone with slightly stronger FE but still primarily FI, I'll think, oh, like, that's kind of weird that you just told me that like your parents are divorced. It's kind of weird timing. It's maybe the timing that makes it a little off-putting and might surprise someone, but it's not the fact itself. Like, to me, what would seem like, quote, too much would be if you were like, my parents are divorced and it's fucked me up ever since, and so, like, it's gonna make me an emotional wreck randomly, sorry. Like, but I think that often TJs will just kind of share, like, a little bit and implicitly hope that, it's, like, enough. Just as how maybe an FJ might share a little bit of their TI opinion and hope they don't have to like spell the whole thing out on the off chance they sound like a little too nitpicky or something. I think that a lot of TJs, especially in the Myers-Briggs community, get shit on a lot by people who use a little more FE, that they don't seem very open-minded, that they're just commanding and they are ruthless, when in reality, I think that T-users try to show their kindness by making sure things run as smoothly as possible. Like, I think that they really want to look out for the welfare of people because they're thinking things like, well, even if I sound a little harsh now, this person's happy. This person's going to be happier when we get this thing done. Like, they're thinking about happiness in a sustainable way more than if I give a little extra validation here. Like, they don't see the point in that. Like, I think that a lot of TE users have hearts of gold that are unfortunately shrouded by a general guardedness because they don't know how to interpret FE. They've probably gone a lot of their lives thinking that people think I'm so harsh, so why should I try anyway? Because the times maybe they've tried to not be harsh, it still came off cold or harsh. And I think that TJs, this is my suspicion, I think that they put more stock in what they do than what they don't do. Like, they don't think that not texting your friend for months is just implicitly like a diss that you don't want to like talk to them. Because I find myself even like falling into this pattern of thinking that I can like not talk to someone for a while and go unnoticed. I think TJs often don't think that how fast they respond to something and how pressing the question is. They like don't really think about the impact it makes if you don't say something. And I mean, like, I also kind of miss out on this, but it's not just this. If you want to be a warm person, you have to text this person constantly to show you care. Because I think some TJs like have voiced like displeasure over this, but I think if it's a pattern of you don't respond a lot, you don't emotionally validate anyone a lot, the pattern is what fucks you over. Like, the pattern is what people will, go off when they think of they should share something with you. It's not just like one time you were this is this. You always are like this is this. Like, even mixing it up a little bit and giving like an unsolicited compliment once in a while and like owning it might improve your relationships with some of your more feely, and by feely I mean people with more FE friends. Because I have a TP friend and a TJ friend, and they frequently also misunderstand each other at the level I think I misunderstand FJs because I poor TI. Like, if someone's primarily using FE to interpret a TJ, they don't express enough for anyone to get an emotional read on them. So it's not just you need to be feely because that's a good person thing to do. Feeling is also a form of communication. Like, literally it's like expressing the really limited TI that you even have, like the TI of this is where I'm at, these are the needs I have. It's more about the communication. Like, if a TJ, can't see me 1 week or can't see his friend 1 week, but doesn't communicate how busy he is or what his circumstances and needs are. And I mean, even I, as someone with better FE, but still like not conscious FE, can forget or neglect to communicate those kinds of things. If you don't communicate where you're at, like in general, then people can make the wrong assumption about you. I know a lot of TJs I pick up subconscious resentment at FE and how they think a lot of society's relationships are dictated by kind of these FE gestures that might seem inauthentic, but really think of it more as FE is a form of like emotional information, but also you communicate emotional information. Like, if someone has a handbook on how to interpret your cues, then they would think you're an awesome person. But you don't clarify the facts that someone would need to know to interpret what you're saying. Like, maybe if you said, hey, let's go hang out this weekend, and someone was like, oh, I'm busy, and then they didn't realize that you'd cleared out your schedule or something to spend time with this person because it's been a while, but you didn't communicate, like, why, then they might, just think it's not a big deal, but maybe you thought it was a big deal. Like, I think that a lot of people, regardless of type, are uncomfortable with spelling things out excessively because they don't want to be, quote, too much or annoying when sometimes people miss out on that emotional information. And this is something that even I am learning, and it's really hard to deal with. Yeah, TJs, I think, are honestly sometimes the best listeners from my experience. Like, they'll keep asking questions and prompting someone to go deeper into an experience or emotion they're having. And I think, they have a really good radar for if someone's just bitching to bitch or if someone's actually trying to maybe on an FI level connect. And I think that for me at least, I feel the most seen by TJs because they'll like remind me of how far I've come or how much further I have to go, or just kind of the way life has played out statistically, historically, all of these things to help even out my poor TI about what can I believe, like what do I stand for. They can remind me of that big picture very easily. And I think a lot of TJs and me, to be honest, maybe it's a TE thing to some extent, have a limiting belief that we're not good enough for love because we're not, naturally inclined to feel without feeling like there's like a huge stake. Like without feeling like every time we express our emotions a little bit more than just the minimal amount, it's like this huge gamble. And I mean, I've seen so many TJs, and honestly myself, like, okay, maybe it's TE users to an extent. I've seen a lot of TE users kind of get into like mind traps where they think that their fear of who they really are and how their expressions are going to come off is going to lead them to just total like total hell, essentially. Like, we think that to express something that we associate as similar to FE would just be the absolute worst thing to ever happen. Like, this person, like a form of rejection, the worst rejection you could get from like anyone for a TE user would be like, you're so dramatic, like why do you like me? You don't deserve someone like basically being put down by the object of our affection or whatever. Like, we can like pretend that we're like these hotshots at work and we're like employee of the month and like career women and career men, but then like with relationships feel just totally in the dark. Like, feel like I don't know how whatever I'm doing is being received. I don't know what signals are being misread. There's this whole world of communication that could just be lost on us. I just know for me, even though I have stronger FE than TJs, when I think of just the expanse of miscommunication that could happen, it makes me not even want to try. This is why I think a lot of, INTJs can maybe isolate and think that they're going to be forever alone. And this is why I think ETJs can be like, I don't have emotions, as a form of compensation for, but if I did, they would be like really unchecked and unmanaged, and I don't want to think about what I'm bad at. A lot of people don't want to think about what they're bad at, and I think that TJs don't realize just how often a lot of us can experience these fears and isolation. So the way for me how TE manifests is I take the fact that I know as a fact that everyone can suffer from similar experiences. It frees me up to share my own in an effort to like tease out other people's. So it's weird because on the one hand, we both use TE and FI, but often TJs will be like, you're so much more popular than me. I have no idea how you do it. They'll say that, they'll pay lip service to this fact more than an FJ or TP might. And I think it's because they secretly kind of wish that they had the ability to be gregarious the way people with more FE can come off. But really, I don't use like FE when I'm trying to make friends. I use the TE of, I know that people seek connection, which maybe FE can get more, but I use that as my weapon when I'm trying to break people out of their shells, essentially. And I think TJs really like that because it seems like when I initiate giving them a compliment, I just see them kind of be like, oh, thank you. And it's so cute and so subtle. And I think that I'm also really humble because, no offense to TI, but often I think that when I give TI a compliment, they'll kind of be like, oh, I already knew that, or be like, oh, and be like almost too surprised to like properly reciprocate it. But a TJ, I feel like, will take that compliment in and then randomly bring up that they really appreciated that I liked it like later, and I'll be like, oh my god, you remembered, thanks. But I just feel like sometimes a TE user who's maybe in a bitter state resents their FI and like wishes they weren't feeling so deeply, or maybe wishes they were a little more emotionally predisposed. But in reality, I think that, you're not obligated by these kinds of sometimes inauthentic social norms and obligations that maybe us with stronger FE can. Because yeah, like, we are better at expressing how we feel with no shame, but the trade-off is that we can feel obligated when others express with no shame, versus TE has some of its own, like, I guess, autonomy in what it chooses to express at times. And I think that maybe a mental block is that there's a real and present threat if you express, and I can like buy into that too a lot. But in reality, a lot of the spice of life, which is a fact, is that change is consistent, and often expressing your emotions is what leads to the best change and the best kind of, I guess, roller coaster you would like for life to be. Because without emotion, life is just honestly boring, and no TJ can bullshit me into thinking that they're okay with their lives being boring. So, yeah, that was my very brief ramble on TE. And I really do appreciate TJs more than you could ever know. So, yeah, that's all I have to say for now.